Seriously, we live in the age of the reboot, the remake, the sequel, or the prequel. Why can't they just create something new? Welcome to SciTrek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. So, if you are a regular SciTrekker, you will know that every other week I'm talking about something that's being planned to be rebooted. Last week it was The Last Starfighter. Before that it was Space Above and Beyond. Even Stargate has been considered to be rebooted, and Firefly, and every other damn show ever made. We've had lots of reboots in the past. Sometimes they work, Battlestar Galactica, sometimes they don't. You could even really consider all the current Star Trek to be a reboot, even though that would be a soft reboot. A reboot where, on the whole, they remember that the other shows actually happened. The hard reboot is when you pretend the old show didn't happen at all. But why does Hollywood insist on keep making these damn shows? Well, the cynic inside me believes that it's quite simple, really. They do it because they know there's a ready-made audience. People will watch. Actually getting a show and then getting people to watch it is quite a difficult thing. Imagine Firefly. Imagine they'd actually advertised that well and got people excited about the show before it came out. Then people might have actually watched it, and then it might have actually survived more than 14 episodes. But they didn't, because they got the advertising woefully wrong. Fox also then messed around with the schedule, and they did all sorts. I actually genuinely believe if Firefly was made today and put straight onto a streaming service, it would have survived, because people would have watched it. It could have been a bit of a slow burn maybe, but all of the episodes for the first series would have been dumped in one go. People would have watched it, and it would have been a massive hit. But because it was put on a network that advertised it badly and scheduled it badly, nobody watched it and it failed. And these shows nowadays cost a bloody fortune. Any new Stargate series, even if it's 10 or 12 episodes, will probably cost anything up to $150 million to produce. Now that is a massive investment for anybody. It's a really big check to write. And at a time when there is a big squeeze on the entertainment industry, particularly on streaming services that have traditionally spent a lot of money on new shows, a lot of TV and executive producers and things have got a little bit nervous. So what do you do when you're nervous? You go with something that you consider to be a bit safer. In this case, a reboot, a remake, a prequel, or a sequel. If you can make a sequel or a prequel of something that people already love, it's far more likely, even if you don't produce a product that's particularly good, to get people to at least watch it, at least initially. And then hopefully they will fall in love with that project and continue to watch it. But you get over the first hurdle immediately. The first hurdle, getting people to watch it in the first place. Now, I actually have no problem with sequels. I like the idea of continuing a story. The only time I ever have a problem with a sequel is if when they rush it. So, for example, Die Hard. Biggest hit of the year, massive surprise hit. Nobody had any clue it was going to be that big a movie. So they rushed a sequel. Instead of doing a sequel that was thought through and planned and with a good story, they did something really quickly. And it just failed. Another problem with sequels is they're never quite as good as the original. Very, very few films are. T2, Aliens, Godfather Part 2. Other than that, most sequels are weak compared to the original. But it's because they're compared to the original. Predator 2, for me, actually, is a pretty good film. But if you compare it to Predator, it's a crock of shit. I do have a problem with prequels. I hate prequels. I'm really worried about Strange New Worlds at the moment as a prequel because, as I've said in a previous video, the difference between a good show and a great show, you need to have a really good bad guy. The problem with a prequel is you already know who the bad guys are. You already know what happens because you've got the series from the future to compare to. For the Federation, we know who the bad guys are. We know who the threats are from that period because we've already seen it. So they can't give us a new bad guy. They can't give us a new threat. Instead, what they have to do is try to rehash existing threats, the Gorn, for example, in Strange New Worlds, and try to make them more interesting somehow. But the result of that is you destroy canon. So I'm not a big fan of prequels. But again, the reason why prequels get made and reason why they get created is because of our desire to understand why a TV show got to where it did. So we like to know how something happened. Why did we get to this point that the new series started? What is the background? What is the history? We like to see that. We're going to see that in Game of Thrones, even though it's set way before. But I would argue, again, it's a bit of a waste of time because we already know what happens. So I have absolutely no problem with a sequel. I hate a prequel. But a reboot and a remake, they very, very rarely work. Battlestar Galactica worked basically because there was like 30 years between them, so that kind of worked. Sometimes projects need a reboot or a remake because they get so complicated it's the only way to do it, but I would argue in that case, just don't. Sometimes a reboot or a remake is a good thing because even though, say, a movie had a really good idea and was maybe a cult classic, it was not made very well. The special effects weren't good enough or something like that. And actually we could do a remake now and do a much better job. But even things like that are kind of rare. There are rumours that they're going to try to make a remake of Flight of the Navigator. Now that is a movie that does not need to be remade. The special effects actually, because they were simple and subtle, still stand up today and still look great. There's no reason to remake that movie. Another film, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that was, again, maybe I'm being cynical, but it was remade for the cha-ching, for money, because they just wanted to. There was no reason to remake the original because the original was beautiful on its own. So most of the time, if a film is done right in the first place, you don't need to do a remake or a reboot. But they will do because of the name, because it's a film we recognise, so a film we will watch. And it's as simple as that. They want bums in seats. Because getting somebody to sit down and watch a new show, to become invested in a new series, is actually an incredibly difficult thing to do. So by doing a remake or a reboot, they cut out the middleman. They cut out that initial problem. And that is why we live in the age of the reboot and the remake. So, get into the comments, guys. Tell me what you think. Do you agree with me or am I way off base here? Do you like a remake? Do you like a reboot? Do you like a sequel or a prequel? Am I wrong about prequels, by the way? I'd love for you to tell me in the comments. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. And if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the join button and becoming a fully fledged SciTrekker. As always, please stay safe. I'll see you next time.